Let me know if you can hear me. It's been forever since I did one of these. Can't even remember how to do it. Throw a message in there if you can hear me. It has been a long time since I did one of these, and not too sure if I've done it right. A few people joining already. Your filmmaker, hello. Monray, loud and clear, good. Chris saw the anamorphic live streams and decided to go ultra wide. Yeah, I got to go against the grain. Actually, I did have it ready to go, and then I realized that the camera would have to be like halfway across the room there. So that's not happening. I got to wait for my Pixels to come back before I can set up with that. Why 10 millimeters? Why not 10 millimeters? I can get, like, if you could see how I am like 4 inches from the lens, that's why 10 millimeters. I have the 10 millimeters. I use it to record self-driving videos in my Cybertruck. You're living in the future. Good for you. Juston, is that right? Yeah, no, it's actually a really good vehicle lens. I've used this before. You can just pop it in the corner. You can even put it right in the dash right in front of you. And I mean, if you were driving a car, like this is how far it'd be. It's like, it's a great lens for that. Nico, hi from Singapore. Hello. Juston. Okay, good. I'm glad I got it right. So if anyone has any questions, throw them in the comments there. Otherwise, we're just going to talk. I had a question about the use of the DJI RS4 seems to have an issue with the use of a cage on the camera in vertical mode. It doesn't calibrate. Do you have an issue with your FX3, for an example? That just sounds like a weight issue, to be honest with you. So you probably need to use some counterbalance weights, because an RS4 should very easily support a camera in a cage. No problem. Have you tried the Suncrafter lights? I have not. I have not even heard of that brand. Kofi says, how's the office? The office is good. I'm battling with natural light problems right now. I'm right in front of a window, and if I open this window, it's like natural light problems. So we're not lit by anything other than the whatever light is coming through my blackout curtains, which is clearly not very blackout. Are you getting the A1 too? No, I'm not. No, I am not. I have not a lot of interest in. It's a great camera, honestly, and I'm still waiting for one from Sony to do more of a review on it, but I don't have any interest in picking it up myself just because I don't need it. I do not need it. What product are you hoping for in 2025? I just did a video, or just shot a video about the GFX 50R, and I'm very interested in that fixed lens, medium format Fuji that is allegedly coming in March. A lot of rumors suggesting that. Looking forward to that. It says it's going to have like an aspect ratio dial on it, which will be really fun. So that's one thing. I would love to say in FX3 too, but that's not coming this year. There's no need for it. That camera is still selling crazy. So I don't think we'll see that probably till next year. When are you collabing with Kofi with the GFX 50R? Yeah, we got to do something, eh? We got to come to the city and we should do a little street walk. Maybe next week. You around next week at all, Kofi? Maybe we can do something then. 24-70 GM Mark II, Sigma 24-72, or Sony 24-50. So if you want to throw a question in about lenses, I'll give you a little piece of feedback. You need to include what it is that you shoot as well, because just saying the lenses is like saying which is the best color, blue, yellow, orange. Yeah, like the answer is as long as a piece of string. You give me some context, and I can give you some proper response. Question about the Sony 2870 F2. Been hearing conflicting remarks about using an 86 to 82 mil step down adapter with no vignetting. Some say it works, some say it doesn't. Doesn't. I covered that in my video. I was one of the few people that did cover that specific issue. Works fine. Maybe the step-up rings that some people are using are slightly different size, slightly different thickness. If you're using multiple step-up rings, so instead of just going from like an 86 to a, what did you say, 86 to 82? Yeah. If you use multiple, that could definitely create more of a vignette because it's further from the front element of the lens. In my testing, in a few different scenarios, 0 issues. Anna even had 2 filters on there. So maybe go watch the video that I made and you can see what I'm saying. I had 0 issues with it though. What issues were people saying? Like how bad was the vignetting? I haven't seen anyone talk about that. Hello from Turkey. I am interested in 40 mil. Which 40 mil lens do you recommend? F1.4, F1.8. What are you, or F2? What do you shoot? Need to know what you shoot. What feature would be your wish list for the A7S IV or FX3 II? FX3 II is hands down going to be built-in ND, internal ND. I think if they can make the size a little bit bigger, people will be okay with that and include an internal ND. That camera will sell like crazy. And I think part of the reason that it's going to be so long before we get an FX3 II is because that's likely going to be something that's included. It's one of the biggest asks, and Sony knows that. Right now, there's no point just dropping an FX3 Mark II if it doesn't have something in it that's amazing, because it's already one of the best-selling video cameras probably for the past 3-4 years, however long it's been out. So they're not just going to drop a camera without a standout feature, and I think that's the standout feature. Low light, like who needs more than 12,800 realistically? So autofocus on that camera is still ridiculous. The ND is going to be the big thing for that. Anybody want affordable telephoto primes like the Nikon PF lenses? We need a 600mm f5.6 or 6.3 prime. Most don't have 12K for 600. Yeah, I mean, they're expensive. Big telezooms are always going to be expensive. Message retracted. Now I don't want to know what that says. We've got 24 people in here. Look at that. It's been so long since I did a live. It's got to have been maybe 2 years, something like that. I'm so disconnected from doing these, but I'm seeing more and more people doing it. So give it a go. I'm so out of touch with doing it that I'm actually using the YouTube. Like I'm not even running this through any software, which I know you should be doing. I'm using camera plug directly into the computer, straight through the YouTube app, and the mic from the studio display. Make sure you run the likes up. Get liking. Thank you, Kofi. Listen to that man. He knows what he's talking about. What's the best budget wide angle lens? Something like the 14mm Samyang. This one. This is the only one I use now. The Samyang was fine. But if you want like actual wide with no distortion, and like lines are straight, and what I mean by that, like most wide angle lenses, they have some form of the lines aren't straight. You can see with this, no matter where I put this in the frame, the line stays. What are we doing? There you go. The line stays straight. Telltale sign of a cheaper, less optically perfect wide-angle lens will be if I put my arms out like this, they'll start to bow and it'll start to look curved at the edges. So this is a great lens for that, the Laowa 10mm f2.8. If you could only get one anamorphic lens for the Red KX, what would you pick? Tell me what you're shooting. Tell me what you're shooting. I don't think I'm very educated in terms of giving an opinion on a Red, but I will try my best. Hello from Romania. What lens do you recommend that is better than the Sigma 105? So many lens recommendations. Sigma 105 f1.4 for Sony a7 III portraits, indoor and outdoor, cheaper. If you're shooting portraits, I mean, do you have a 50? When you say better than a 105, like define better. Do you mean yeah, I need to know what you mean by better. Better could be sharper. Can allow a terminal F2.8 change Tamron 17 to 28 for real estate photography, like zooming in post? I wouldn't use the Lauer 10mm F2.8 for real estate. It's too wide. There's a certain, like I've done a whole video literally covering this topic. With real estate, you don't want to make things look too wide because it's going to be deceiving for the people that are looking at the pictures and then they go and view the house. Now, there is a time and a place to use a lens like this, specifically bathrooms, really, really tiny spaces that you just don't have any other way to get into and kind of showcase the room. So that's where I'd use this lens for real estate. Otherwise, stick to 16 and higher, maybe 14 at a push. When you're shooting as well, don't have too high, don't go too low. Try and go like kind of waist level for real estate with a wide angle lens. Have you used the Blazar Apex on the FX30? I might have missed the video. Yes, I have. I have an FX30. Is this the FX30? No, that's the FX3. I mean, I think I could put it on this right now in the middle of the stream. I don't know what would happen, but yeah, I have. My biggest gripe with this lens right now is the minimum focus distance is huge, and it really makes me not want to use it. So I am thinking of actually selling this. It's a great lens, but I think the minimum focus for me, for what I wanted to use it for, which is more like talking head stuff like this, it doesn't work for my setup right here. I have to have the camera too far back. I'm not a fan, so yeah. Do you like the 16 to 35 GM2? Yeah, it's great. I actually debated buying that one myself. I don't own a 16 to 35 anymore. I sold them all. I used the Tamron, I don't know where it is. It's Tamron 17 to 28. Like that's my wide zoom, if you want to call it that. But the GM Mark II is great because it's so small, like tiny little thing. Compression and bokeh. So this is referencing you want a lens that's better than the 105 f1.4 for the Sony a7 III, and you want better bokeh. So the answer to your question there is this one right here. You gonna focus on that? There you are. Or the Viltrox 135 f1.8. That's going to get you better compression and better bokeh than the 100 f2. What did we say? 100 f1.4. That's what I go with. My Red KX is Super 35 cents, so I want to use it for a narrative as my Nissi Athenas for my talking head and interviews. I mean, I don't know a huge amount about Reds. I've never personally owned one, but I know a lot of people use the Sigma 16 to 35 on a Super 35 sensor. Because that's F1.8, timeless lens. How wide is too wide in your opinion? Let's say with street travel photos with people in the scene. For street and travel with people in the scene, depends on what you want to shoot. Like, I don't know, maybe 20 is a bit wide. It's hard to say. Like people think that there are rules with things, and there generally is, but if you have a reason for doing something, you can kind of do whatever you want. It doesn't make sense to use a 10mm for a live stream, but here we are. So yeah, I mean, when I'm shooting, I don't shoot a ton of street, and for travel, my preference on the lens does change, but right now it's probably around like the 40mm, 50mm. Anything from 35 to 50 is the sweet spot for travel, I find. If you just want to use like a prime lens, you could apply that same logic to street too. Or event photography. Event photography is a completely different game whatsoever. For event photography, there's a few lenses that you should have in your bag. Absolutely. One being a 24 to 70, the other being a 70 to 200. You could even say the 35 to 150 from Tamron is like the perfect event lens. Because with events, you don't want to get in people's faces. You want to stand back and be able to capture candid moments, things happening without you being there to impede, impose on their conversation or whatever is happening. So a zoom lens is definitely what you want for event photography. Should I wait for the release of the Sony a7 IV before buying an A7S III. So this should be a real whole video topic in itself, but like, should I wait for this before buying this? The way I normally approach this question is, does the thing that you're looking at buying solve all the problems that you need to be solved? Does it do everything you need it to do? If the answer is yes, just buy it now, because you don't know what that new thing is actually going to have. Rumor sites can sometimes get a little bit of it right, but they don't always get it all right. And the other thing you might also have is, when you buy something new, it's a lot more expensive. So you don't necessarily, like, if you don't need those features, you're spending all that extra money to get something that's more expensive that you don't need. So look at the problem, what you need fixed. Does X camera solve that problem? Yes, buy it now. Don't worry about waiting in the future. Certain cameras as well, specifically Sony, do hold their value very, very well, especially if you buy used, or refurbished or whatever. So if you buy it used, refurbished, and then something new does come out and you're like, I wish I got that instead, then you could probably resell it and you're out a few $100 essentially for the cost of the rental. So try diopters for anamorphics. They're fairly inexpensive and up a ton. Yeah, I got a cheap set actually, a newer set, for like some super close-up shots that we did for that short film. And they do work really, really well. But I didn't think about using it for this. I have to give that a go. Good tip, Kofi. Man knows what he's talking about. I got the Sony G20mm f1.8. Do you think that lens is better for vlogging in tight spaces? Yeah, I do. I actually did have that lens, opposed to the 24 f1.4 for vlogging. Actually, what got me on that lens was when I helped Gerald film his tour of Marquez's studio, MKBHD. That's the lens he uses for shooting all those tours, is a 20mm. And it is like the perfect amount of wide to get into small spaces, get 2-3 people in the frame. So yeah, the 20mm f1.8 is great for that kind of thing. Hi, Chris. Interesting live stream. Is it interesting? I guess that's a good thing. Glad I caught up. What drones do you use, and would the new soon-to-be released Mavic 4 be something you'd be interested in buying? Here's where I stand on drones. They have just become a tool to get like 2 shots. So I don't personally, like, I've seen a lot of rumors of the Mavic 4 and I've heard a lot of good things as well. I personally don't see a need for it myself. I think there will be people that need what it can do. But for me, I use the Mavic Air 3. I like that it has the little telezoom on there, which is what, like a 70mm equivalent, just for getting parallax movements around things, but mostly for when I travel. Other thing with that though is that drone is above the 250 limit. So err on the side of caution with that. So the other drone I'll typically bring is the Mavic Mini, what's it called? The Mini 3 Pro. It's 249 grams. Those are the only 2 drones I use for like cinematic shots, if you want to call them that. The biggest drone I use now is the Avata 2, just because if you're new here or if you've been around for a while, you know that I do like to fly FPV. I went on like a binge and deep dark rabbit hole like 2 years ago, learned to fly that properly. So Mavic Mini 3 Pro, Mavic Air 3, and Avata 2. Avata 2 is like the best way you can get into FPV drones easily. In your opinion, how far in years are we from the only Sony A7 FX cameras to record 32 internal? I don't know. When you chat with the Sony engineers, I'm trying to think here. I'm trying to carefully word what to say here. I don't know of anything coming, but I know of their thought process and how features are implemented and how they choose what features are implemented after having many conversations with them. And they're always looking at solving problems, opposed to, like, people think about features, but that's not the way that Sony kind of thinks. They think about solving problems. I don't think we need 32-bit float inside cameras because I don't think there's enough people that are peaking their audio. I think most people that are using video cameras, which is the only reason you're going to be needing audio, know enough about audio that they're not peaking. So I don't know if there's a reason to include 32-bit float within a camera. Because when you include something like that, you have to then take processing power from something else or remove potentially a feature that does solve a problem to include 32-bit float. So how many years are we away? I don't think we'll see it for at least, if we ever see it, 3 years, because I don't think it's a problem we need to fix. Nor does Sony. Do you use any mist filters? Yes. I just swapped over to the Maglock system from Peter McKinnon, Polar Pro. Love this just because of how fast it is to attach things. Yes, there's a color cast. Do I care about it? No, because I use all the same filters and you can just fix it in post. So it's not a big deal. So I use those filters. I use the mist one, but my other preference for mist filter would be, where is it? If you want something that's a little less misty, less halation than Black Pro Mist, try these. I don't know if this is going to focus. Focus. TFN Black Satin 3. I talked about these lots. This is a little tiny one for my Hasselblad lens for my GFX 50R. But a black satin, they come in a 1, 2, and a 3. I like the 3. What that does is it gives you a little bit more of a like filmic look because it softens the image ever so slightly. Also gives you a little bit of halation to your image, not quite to the level that a Black Pro Mist does. So it's just like a softer, more pleasing image. So yeah, black satin. What else? Oh, we missed a few now. Do you think 10mm f2? Oh, okay. Sorry, do you think the 10mm f2.8 is better than the 20mm f1.8 for vlogging? I really enjoy vlogging with the 10mm here. I wonder if we can disconnect here just so I can show you why. So take this off here. So right now I'm holding the camera, like if you were to vlog, I'm holding it maybe 12 inches from my face. So like you don't have to deal with your arm being all the way out here. You can get in really close. It's got a great minimum focus distance. Like I do genuinely think this is a fun lens for vlogging. And part of the reason I like the super wide look is because when you're vlogging, people don't just want to see you like up close. They want to see what's going on around you, the environment that you're in. And this does a really good job of that because it's 10mm. So is it better for vlogging than the 20? Yeah, it is. We've got natural light problems coming again. Let's dip this little app down. Josh, how are you? Good to see you here. Josh wins over everybody with live streams. He does like a weekly one. And every time I see it, I watch a lot of his. Every time I see him, he far surpasses everybody now in terms of knowledge and testing. Like he tests everything. And he doesn't just like, if he had this lens, it wouldn't just be, here's a video on this lens. It'll be, here's a video on this lens and here's 5 other videos relating to this lens too. Like he goes in deep. If you don't watch Josh's stuff, you should. What feature or quality makes the A7S III your primary camera and the FX3 your secondary? Source, your website. Well, I've got some bad news. My website is very much out of date. I don't have the A7S III anymore. My primary camera is an FX3. My secondary camera is an A7R5. And then that one right there is FX30. And I just picked up another FX30. Just because the FX30s, when you're in controlled lighting, honestly, is chef's kiss. Like great camera. But what makes the A7S III better than the FX3 when I owned both? Honestly, one of the reasons that I sold the A7S III as a video camera, quote unquote, was because it didn't have the same video features that the FX3 did. If you're looking to shoot video, the FX3 is a better camera, in my opinion. Camera should have 32-bit flow. I disagree. It should be the standard, no more setting levels. But that's kind of like saying every camera should have 32-bit flow is like saying that every camera should have internal raw recording, so that you're removing any equation of having to set the camera up correctly. Like to set levels on a camera is so easy, and so many mics now have internal 32-bit float built in that I don't think there's enough of a justification for them to put the R&D into cameras. I'm not saying there's companies out there that won't end up putting it in there. I do think that will happen, but I think Sony as a manufacturer won't do that for a long time. Short stash filters. Yeah, I have one of those somewhere. I have it on my Q343. But the problem with that is then you can't attach the lens hood to the front of it. Which Crocs are those? These are the Crocs slides, aka the most comfortable shoe you'll ever wear in your life. I'm a huge Crocs person. I probably have like 6 pairs of Crocs in varying colors and styles. I wore Crocs before Crocs became like as fashionable as they are now. Have you tried Tiffin's Glimmer Glass 1? That's my favorite diffusion filter. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I have tried it. No comments. I haven't used it enough to say one way or the other. I personally like their black satin. How do you charge your services? Day rate or like price per hour? I don't do a huge amount of like pro work like I used to. We really dialed back the number of weddings that we shoot now. And I only shoot real estate for my wife just because it may not seem it, but like this in itself became too much of a job to be able to do other stuff as well. And from a financial standpoint, like when you have two things that require a decent amount of time to do, you go with the one that makes you the more money, right? And as YouTube. But when I did do professional work, not by the hour, definitely not by the hour, because the problem with by the hour is you get penalized for being efficient at what you do. When you do something more and more, you get better and better, but you will simultaneously get faster and faster. So just because you can do it faster, why do you need to get paid less? The argument there is you could also raise your hourly rate. But I would typically charge for the project, for the job that's involved. Charging per hour is potentially good for maybe post-production services, like editing, that kind of thing. But for everyone has a different opinion. For actual production work, I always charge based off of the actual work that we're doing and how much I think it will take. The gear that I'm going to be using, the setup, the pre-production required. Weddings is a great example. Like photographers, videographers for weddings, generally speaking, like once they're at a certain point, they don't charge for 8 hours of coverage or what. It's just like, this is the price. And they have different packages. Do you still shoot weddings? Oh, there's a couple other questions here first. Have you considered making a feature film or documentary for streaming services? Yes. Yes, I have. One of my, I'll show you right here. Right on top of my screen there, one of my goals is more narrative filmmaking and also be an expert expan photographer. So we're working on it. It's good to have plans. What that'll look like, I'm not sure. I don't like the traditional way that things, we messed this angle up now. There we go. I don't like the traditional way that you have to do things in terms of like funding and like film festivals. Like it seems so outdated in the world that we live in today. So I want to try and, if I do those things, do it via this, like a few other people are. Do you still shoot weddings? Yes and no. Last year, the year before last, we shot 10 or 12. And then last year, we just like stopped shooting a ton just because few reasons. A, my wife is self-employed now. We have 2 young kids. My wife's work often requires her to work potentially 1 weekend day. And we don't really have a huge amount of support kid-wise. My parents and family all live in England. My in-laws, my wife's parents live 3 hours away. So we don't have a huge amount of support. So getting babysitter coverage for a wedding is not easy. And if they drop out last minute, as so much has happened, so much pressure for the wedding aspect of it. So it became a bit much with young kids. I actually do enjoy shooting weddings. I've shot enough weddings now that it's like, it's very straightforward. You're walking into a day that is, for most people, one of the happiest days in their life. Everyone's in great spirits. We're very selective over the couples that we did work with, so it's always something that meshes well. I really enjoy weddings. They're a great place for me as well to like play about with new gear and that kind of thing. But the nature of life right now means we've drastically cut them down. We did 2 last year. We have 2 booked for this year. It's also becoming a lot more expensive for, like, we outsource the edits. It took us a good number of years to find a company that edits the weddings to the style that we want. And we finally found a company, but now they're obviously getting a lot bigger and their prices are going up hugely, which means profits are dropping down. So we're kind of in an area where we can't really raise our prices much higher just because of the demographic. So we're at like a fine tipping point. So do I shoot weddings still? Yes. It was a very long answer to that question, but that's the details of it. But if Sony did implement 32-bit float, would you say, no, Sony, get rid of it? No, I would never say it. Absolutely not. I'm never going to say get rid of that feature. But in my opinion, I don't think we'll see it for a long time. Should I get the 10mm f2.8? Sure. Give me a reason why. Give me some input. Do you think film school is worth doing, or is it better just learn by teaching yourself at this point with so much information available online? That's because I don't shoot films. I don't know if I'm educated enough to give a response to that in the regard to what you want. What I can tell you is I did go to film school. It was a 3-year course. I dropped out after 2 years because I did not like the direction that the course was going. So that is what, I've been shooting video for years. I started shooting, I got the very first video clip I shot and I'm like 12 years old, skateboarding. That's what got me into video. And then I started to think, I want to make movies. So I went to film school and subsequently dropped out. If I was to repeat that entire process of growing up, which is obviously impossible, but we can talk about it. Don't go to film school. I don't think you need to. I think there are way better ways to fund or use that money now to just make what you want to make, get it in the hands of the right people, get it in the eyes of the right people, and build your own path that way instead. University is expensive. I don't even know what it costs to go to university here in Canada, but I know in the UK it's expensive, and I don't think with the amount of money that you're spending, you're getting a return on investment. Because the other thing with film school is at the end, you come out with all that knowledge, but you're not it's not like a gateway to a job. You still have to start at the very bottom as like a PA, a production assistant, and work your way up. Just because you went to film school doesn't immediately qualify you to be a director. You have to show a body of work and work your way up to that point. So, new desk setup. That one? No, that's the same. Yeah, you've probably just never seen it from this angle from behind before. What it did do is move this back. So this was a lot closer. This was like here before. So we moved it back like 6 feet, something like that. To basically give, because my wife works out of here now, so I have a double desk here. You can see all the way down here. So yeah, basically, so she can work in here. There's more space here. We're renovating a podcast studio right now, my old studio, to have a secondary place to shoot and make a podcast soon too. Would you ever consider moving back to the UK? Probably not. The things I miss of the UK are the people and the culture. I was just back there like 3 weeks ago. We were back there for Christmas with my kids to see everybody. And I do miss the culture of like walking into a pub, and like everyone seemed way friendlier than I remember it being. And it felt like a very different country to what I remember. But I really enjoy the freedom and lifestyle that is offered to you here in Canada. Also, with this being my job now, a huge part of that job and people that I collaborate and work with is in the States. If you're in Europe, you don't get the same access to gear, even though it's through like Sony. Still, like same companies, they all have different departments in Europe, and it's not as ahead as it is here, if that makes sense. Very different world. So for my job, I don't think I could do it. Do aftermarket chargers for Sony ZF-1000 batteries damage them? No, I don't think so. I haven't had any issues. I'm a huge fan of Peter's product. This is technically an aftermarket charger. Zero issues with it. I've been using aftermarket chargers for at least 4 years, various different ones. You can go through my Reels feed and see all the different ones I've tried. I've never had any issues with them destroying batteries or anything like that. I don't know where you got that information from. What's the price of freelancers charge as a second shooter around your area here in Portugal? Around 250 euros with their own camera gear. Second shooter in my area, anything from, depends on experience, anything from $500 to $1,000 Canadian. Including your own gear in there would be obviously an additional charge, but it varies so widely from market to market. Kofi says, going to film school for the film is like getting a business degree for being a business owner. You can do without. The school route might fast track the growing pains, but you can go without. You definitely can go without. And I think I have a lot of conversations with people these days now with having kids of, oh, well, what if they want to go to university? And like, I don't think university is going to exist in 15 years the same way it does right now. And I think that will apply to film school and everything else as well. There'll be certain professional jobs, obviously like doctors, surgeons, lawyers, where like it's required, but for so many other jobs, filmmaking included, I just don't think it's going to be anywhere near as big as it is now. It's going to slowly decline, as in the number of people going. Opinion on second shooter photography with his own gear, working around the 15 hour with the main shooter without editing for around 150 euro per wedding. That seems like that's really low. You're working 15 hours with the main shooter to just turn up and film with your knowledge. What is it, $10 an hour, 10 euros an hour? That's low. That's very, very low. You should be at least triple that. I don't know what the market's like there, but that's what I'd say. I bought a used FX6 and have to decide between the Sony 24 to 105 or Sony 28 to 135. The 28 to 135, this is from Lucas. You're talking about the big cinema lens one, right? With the servo zoom on it. So I had that lens for maybe 3 weeks before returning it because it's too big, it's too heavy, and is very outdated in terms of sharpness and in terms of just the lens that you can kind of rely on for autofocus. Like, it's so old. That lens is in dire need of an update. The 24 to 105 is also in need of an update, but is a better lens because it has They both have OSS, but I would say the 24 to 105 is probably a better option there. It's also a lot cheaper. I love this lens, but I have one question. Can you put an ND on it easily? Sure. What do we got right here? 6 to 9. I mean, we're going to lose exposure, but you want to see if it, which gives you vignetting issues, right? There we are. Oh, no, that's not going to work. Let's get the ISO up. Oh, I got the wrong settings on here. That's not going to work. There you go. We're reducing the shutter speed so you can see. So no vignetting. Okay, we're going back. There you are. Hopefully you appreciate that I just ruined that stream so you can have a live demo. Yo, man, how's the dynamic active stabilization on the Laowa versus... yeah, you have to watch out with super wide lenses when you're using the stabilization because you can get some weird effects. It's almost better having it off, but it's one of those things that you really have to just try for yourself to kind of see. Myself and some friends who follow the YouTube space have been finding the niche getting a little stale. Are you feeling that? Yes, everyone that I know and talk with is feeling the same way. Do you think the future of filmmaking, video production, YouTube? Yeah, this is a huge topic of conversation. And this is the reason why, I don't know if you've noticed, hardly anyone posts to any schedule or frequently anymore. And it's down to a few reasons. Number one, there's so many people doing it now, which isn't a bad thing. Like everyone's entitled to do the same thing. But all the gear now is just so good. It's different to what it was 4 years ago when a camera would come out and it would have a feature or something that just did not exist. And it was exciting for everybody. They would get like someone would get their hands on the gear for the first time. They'd showcase how it works, showcase some example footage, and everyone would get excited. Everyone would want to buy it. Now everything's just so good. And there's so many different cheap versions and budget versions of everything that is good that's also really good. It just, after a while, it just becomes, it's plateaued. It's like when iPhones suddenly got really, really good and then there's no new features and everyone just says, well, now everything's boring, everything's stale. It's such minuscule improvements now. So everyone does feel like it's stale. What do I think the future is? I think the future is more along the lines of people starting to like figure out how they can utilize the new gear, play with the new gear in a storytelling format that really is interesting for people to watch and somehow showcase some of the new features. I don't know exactly what that looks like. I'm still trying to figure that out myself, but that's my personal opinion. I'm bored with comparing this lens to this lens. It doesn't excite me anymore. I don't have any passion to do it. The amount of work involved to the edit, to do all that is just, I don't want to do it. And there's so many other people that feel the same. So we'll see. But the next couple of years will be a true test because it is stale. Thanks, Cam. A little super chat there. Shill Gang. Speaking of Cam, I mean that we've had many conversations about, that's like referencing the previous question about everything becoming stale and boring. That's why so many people are swapping to use vintage lenses and anamorphic lenses. They want something different. They want something that's not clinical, not sharp. They want something that has character, that inspires them to pick up a camera and shoot. And anamorphic being so much more attainable now with Blazar making lenses that have character to them, it's appealing to more people. Any tips on getting clean 120 frames per second footage on the FX30, exposing how I normally would tend to get a lot of noise in the shadows? Honestly, I haven't played about with 120 frames per second on the FX30. So stay tuned maybe as I use them more. I've got 2 of them now. Cam dishing out shield bucks. Yeah. You know what's funny? I was looking at this last night and I'm trying to think of a way that I could turn this into some fun merch. Years ago in England, prior to it being the pound sterling, the there was a version of currency called the shilling. And I want to see if there's a way that we can make like some coins, get some coins, like shill dollars. I think that would be some funny merch. Chris B, great channel. Thank you. PC images, professional creative images. You still skateboard? Lol. I hate saying lol out loud. I feel like an idiot. Do I still skateboard? No, because I am old and I can still skateboard. It's muscle memory that doesn't go away, but you feel super aware of how easy it is to fall as you get older. I one wheel, which is more fun. I remember times when we used to shoot Canon 6D for video and was insane. Yeah. That shell tag really seemed to affect you, Cam McKay. The meme is a little played out. We get the same heat in my community videos. We just ignore the haters. It's the best way to deal with negativity and with people like calling you stuff and names is to just embrace it and call it out. Because at that point, no one's going to say anything else. So just calling yourself a shill is the perfect way to deal with it, because it just immediately shuts up the people that are wanting to call other people shills. What monitor do you use, and do you use the Monitor Plus app? Yeah, I go through so many different setups. What monitors do I use? Right now, what's it called? The new Ninja. You get to test so many pieces of gear. Like I forget all the names of it. The new Ninja, the thin one that doesn't record. That's a good one. I'm waiting on the freaking Blackmagic Pixis monitor because I want to use that with the Blackmagic. But the Monitor Plus app is really good. But the other one, the Sony monitor and control app, is actually really good now as well. Solid app. It's missing a few features that the Monitor Plus app can do, things like anamorphic de-squeeze, but the Sony app is really good now if you just want to work natively with your camera, and you can even USB tether it too, which is hugely underrated. Ross, what's up? Gonclaves TV, where would you put money? Sony ZV-E1. Where would you put Sony ZV-E1? I'm not sure what I mean by that. If you want to give me an updated response. Have you considered making tutorial videos on lighting? Yeah. Lighting and sound are the two most, let me say, a nice way to say this, poorly received pieces of content you can make. Unless you're specifically like a lighting guy. Like if you talk about cameras and lenses, as soon as you make a video on lighting or sound, it's like an immediate tank. It just does not do well. I've tried it many times, and some of the videos that I've made have been like some of my favorite videos. We did a video last year for Amaran, lighting 5 scenes. I brought a bunch of guys in to help me, some of my friends, and we made this great video, and it just so poorly performed. But it was a great video. It was like one studio, 5 different scenes using 3 sets of lights. Loved making it. And I would love to make more, but they don't perform. And when they don't perform and the brand is paying you to make the money, if they don't see the return on investment, they're not going to pay you to make more. So that said, there are some great people that make lighting tutorial videos. Wandering DP is one. Then there's also, what's the other guy called? Let me just see here. He makes some of my favorite videos on lighting. What's his name? No, I don't know. Can't remember it. If I remember it, I'll reference it later. So I just try and stay in my lane. Don't really do lighting. Shinobi 2, that's the one. Thanks, Greg. I kind of think the shill thing is funny. I know Fox meant it as an insult, but when it's turned out to make humorous, there's not much a hater can do. No. And the best thing about that is it gives you great titles as well. Partially agree. I'm just saying the meme of owning the tag. It's hackneyed. That's a cool word. Quickly. but each of their own. We deal with it in the EDC and knife community. Love your content though. Thanks, Marine X. I would love to break into the EDC community. That just seems like a fun, especially for like the short form content that I make. I've tried it a few times and it doesn't do badly, but all the little gadgets and knickknacks, and I'll see Accessorize Me like post stuff and I'm buying that, and I jump on and there's like $500 for like a little piece of machined metal that just has magnets in it. Like that would be a fun niche to work in. Maybe I should try a second channel to go with the other 4 channels that I don't post on. Where are we at? Do you think the Sony ZV-E1 has a place for professional bags? Yes, in terms of, so the ZV-E1 is an interesting camera, and you see so many people talk about it from like a content creation perspective because it's so small and compact, and they're making content for themselves. So like, if for example, this stream went down because the camera overheated, it's not the end of the world. Let's say, for example, I'm filming a video and the camera overheats and I've lost the end of that video. I can shoot it again. It's fine for that. When I talk about professional like work, there's one feature that stands out to me above anything else, and it's pure redundancy. And that is 2 memory card slots. If one of those cards corrupts, do you have a backup of it? The ZV-E1 doesn't have that. So you could use it for professional work. Know the risks that if your card corrupts, you've done professional work, you're going to be up the creek with no paddle. So Epic Light Media, that's the guy for lying. Good to know. I haven't heard of that one. It's interesting hearing channels from other people that are probably extremely well established, and you just have never heard of them before because everyone's algorithms are so tailored specifically to them. Like I'm in my own little bubble, and it's occasionally you'll see like a new channel, like, wow, that's amazing. And then now they kind of come in your bubble, but the bubble's so big, but we're all self-contained. So good to know. We'll check out Epic Light Media. Challenge. I still run an A7 III for both photo and video. It still does everything. I mostly have f4 lenses, 16-35 Z, great lens, 24-105, 100-400. I shoot insects and reptiles. Persuade me to upgrade. Well, here lies the problem here. If you don't see a reason to upgrade, then you don't need to upgrade. Don't fall for gas thinking that like it's the shiniest, latest, and greatest. Like you don't need it. If it does everything you need it to do, then you're fine. That's normally the way that I approach things now. It's like I look at what it is that I have. I look at it as like what it is that I want to do. If I can do that with this, then you don't need to upgrade. If I can do that, but I don't know how to do it, then you need to learn more of that camera before you can justify upgrading. Like, don't just spend your money unless you have an obscene amount of money. Kofi. Wow, I owe Kofi lunch. Look at that. Photo video niche, I think we'll still have a bunch of gear videos, but it will move to the things you do, the places you go. Yeah, exactly. How you create and take the space over. Also, yeah, we are forgetting. Brady, I would say, though, is more of like, he is like a one-man band of like DP knowledge. Brady is Brady Bissett. He just did actually a really great lighting breakdown with, can't remember the guy's name. Shane something. Brady is he is a wealth of knowledge. When we were on the creative production last year, he'd set up his scene and everything like that. And I said to him, I was like, we should do a video for you right now. And he was like, well, why? Like, people won't care. I'm like, no. Let's just get you walking through, talking about everything you've done, why things are the way they are, why the light is the way it is. And he started talking, and no word of a lie, like he did like a 14-minute video, one take, walking through an entire scene. I think he posted it as a whole video. Guy is a wealth of knowledge. The autocorrect in super chats is diabolical. Yeah, I'm here for it. Trying to read that sentence had my brain shutting down. Yeah, I feel you. Nick says, I'm mainly a photographer, but want to start getting into video. I currently switched to the Sony with an A7R5. Is that good enough video for me for a start? I need to get a second cam for photos anyway, but should I get something that also does video better than the A7R5? A7R5 posted a video about this November, maybe? Yeah, November, just before the Sony event in New York. Hugely underrated camera, and still is. And bang for buck is probably one of the best options you can get out there right now. It was the first camera that Sony introduced that just kind of had everything. This is when the FX3 had already been out, the A7S3 had already been out, the A7 IV had already been out, and the A7, what were some other ones that came out? Basically, like all those cameras started having little random new features, and then Sony brought out the A7R5 and was like, just have it all. There you go. So hugely underrated camera. The one gripe people have with it is the rolling shutter. So be aware of that. But I'd urge you to go and watch my video from November, because fantastic camera. It's still my, I use the A7R5 when I shoot weddings more than I use the FX3, because the stabilization on that camera is so good. I can run the 135 handheld, no issue, no shake. Looks like it's on a tripod. It's ridiculous. So I need to get a second cam for photos anyway. Should I get something that also does video better than the R5? Honestly, if you already have the R5, yeah, I'd get a video camera, because you don't need a better stills camera than the R5 right now. Best cinema light channel. Lewis Potts, that's the one. Nate says, I'm currently struggling with running two separate systems, Canon R6 for photo, A7S3 for video. I'm thinking of selling the R6 and getting an A7C as my A7 III as my B cam. Yeah, running two brands for cameras is never easy when you need them to match. It's easier now with like 10-bit, but it's still a lot of extra work. And even then, like, skin tones will be slightly off, and that's where it's really obvious. R6, yeah, I mean, I'd sell the R6. A7S3, if you can, I would get an A7 IV or maybe a ZVE one, but then it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the two card slots. Just because the A7 III had different color science on the sensor, like it was Sony's like first budget full frame sensor. We're going back 5 years now, so it had a very different color science. It's also not 10-bit, if I remember rightly. I think it's only 8-bit. I might be wrong there. We're going back a while here. So maybe try and look at the A7 IV to pair better with the A7S III or a ZV one. You think Sony A7 V will shoot 4K with 1.1x crop, 120 frames per second? I don't know. There's a lot more people out there that know more about this than me in terms of like sensors and calculations, and like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I just got the Tamron 35 to 150 f2 to f2.8 for Sony. What's your opinion on it, Chris? I haven't got to use it yet. Yeah, it's a phenomenal lens. Like, I still have right here. Love. Nope, that's not it. That's the 50 to 400. There's the 35 to 150. So yeah, fantastic lens. The only gripe with this lens is it's so freaking big and heavy. It's a lens that you want to bring, like you could bring to travel with you and kind of replace 2-3 other lenses. But the problem with it is that it's not a travel lens. So it's just like this catch-22 conundrum that you get caught in, but ridiculously sharp, powerful lens. I'd get the A7C II. Yeah, that's a good option too. More budget friendly. Up your content, bro. Salute from Miami. Keep killing it. Thank you. GFX Kid Films. Yeah, it's a tank is a good way to describe that lens. What do you think about the Sigma 28 to 35 f1.8? I had that lens from Sigma for 3 or so weeks, and I didn't do anything with it other than make like a couple of shorts. I'm pretty sure I was like in the midst of just like burnout last year, and it didn't excite me as much as it should have excited me. Looking back on it now, there was a lot of things I could have done with that lens. It's a very, very interesting lens. They've essentially rehoused the 16 to 35 updated it, the 16-35 that everyone knows and loves, and gave it to us for email. Great little lens, even though it's not little. Very niche though, like 28-35. It's not huge range, right? You kind of need to use it on a camera that has the ability to crop so that you can get more reach out of it. How long have we been on here? How do you tell? Oh, 1 hour. Look at that. Yeah, I think it is 45. You're right. I'm looking at 28-35. It's like, that doesn't seem right. That's how much attention I paid to that. You're right. It is 45. But even still, like 28-45 is not, it's not huge. If it was more like 24, like, this is an argument that not a lot of people understand, but there's a huge difference from 24 to 28. It's probably one of the bigger areas where you notice that 4 mil difference compared to anything else. Like 66 to 70, you don't really notice it. But 24 to 28, you notice that a lot. When you're in a wide space, it makes a huge amount of difference. No worries. We get, like, I get names and focal lengths wrong all the time. Like, there's so much gear that we talk about. It's like, it's impossible to remember all. Do you think the DJI Ronin RS3, not the RS3 Pro, can handle the A7S III with a cage and 24-70 GM? Yeah, you should be no problem whatsoever there. Now, because it's 24-70 on a gimbal, and it's towards probably the peak end of what you can balance, you might need to get some, let's see if I have any here. You can get these. This is actually from Small Rig. So this clips specifically for the RS3 as well. This will attach just on the bottom there to the bottom of the plate. And typically with a gimbal, you're normally finding that you're not able to move it back as far to get it properly balanced. This will allow you to put a little extra weight on the front or on the rear so you can basically balance it correctly. It's one of the things that they keep improving year after year with the Ronin gimbals. They make the arms longer, and by making them a little bit longer, you're able to now balance much heavier setups. No one really talks about that. So we could make a video about that, but never will. Good to see you live, Chris. Enjoy your vid since I found you. Any tips on using the FX3 in low light? I got the Sure. It's not Sure. 35mm anamorphic, and it's cool. Using the FX3 in low light, I mean, you got a low light monster on your hands there. Use it at one of your base ISOs, 800, 640, 800, depends on which log setting you're in. Flexible ISO, that's another whole topic in itself. But yeah, use it at one of the base ISOs if you can, but don't be scared to go into the mid-tier ISOs. What I will say is once you start getting into that 5,000, ISO 5,000 kind of territory, it makes more sense to go up to your second base ISO and stop down with an ND. What I mean by that is, in some instances, even if you're shooting inside, shoot at 12,800 and apply an ND to it, and then just use the ND to affect your exposure. Because if you're in those mid-tier ISOs, you might find that you're getting a little bit of noise, where as soon as you go to 12,800, your second base, it's going to clean up all that noise. So don't be scared to shoot more at 12,800 and just stop down. Nick says, if you could refund all the equipment you've bought 100%, would you return your current camera gear setup and get other things, or would? Great question. I mean, I'm in a different situation now to what I was in when I first started, even to 2 years ago, where I was doing more like paid work for other people. Like, I'm sitting on a lot of Sony G Master lenses that don't get used because I'd use those for weddings, and I typically just use a lot of the same lenses myself. If I could sell everything, I'd probably, I don't know. That's a great question. I would definitely probably still be with Sony. What I would probably invest a little bit more money in is maybe some more primes. Maybe even some more manual lenses, but that, like, everyone goes through cycles when they get money and they can buy the best of the best lenses. Like the G Masters, you buy the G Master lenses, and then after a while you're like, it's too clinical, and now I want to try something else. And now you buy manual focus lenses and anamorphic lenses. Like, you're constantly evolving, so it's a really tricky question to answer. Also, like, I really enjoy shooting with my Leica Q3-43 as like a everyday carry travel camera now. So expect to see me now, like, anytime I'm traveling, you'll see two cameras around my neck. You'll see the GFX 50R because I'm obsessed with X-Pan, and you'll see the Leica Q3-43 because I just like shooting with it. And then if I'm making a video, it's being shot with a Sony FX3. That's basically where I'm at. It's the wide end makes a huge difference. Agreed. Are we going to see more Brockhurst lives? Maybe. This is honestly, this is a nice way to stay in touch with, even if it's a much smaller community than like the audience sizes. Like, it's way more engaging and much nicer than just someone writing a comment and being able to respond to one comment and then that's it. You don't really have any more of a conversation. The reason behind that, if people don't realize, is the way the YouTube app works. When you respond to comments, as soon as you've responded, the comment just disappears from the YouTube app, unless you go into the filters and start playing about with the filters there. It's like, so it's really hard to have a conversation continuously unless you're Cam, and Cam's really good at having long conversations with people, mostly when they call him a shill. I have a Sony 7200 GM. First, it's very heavy in autofocus and not so good. Do you have any recommendations to buy something else like Tamron? If you want a big zoom lens, one of my favorites is the 50-400. This is one of those lenses that it feels like, for the cost, it's like kit lens quality. Like, that's what you're going to get, but then you get it and you realize it's not, and it's wildly sharp. The autofocus is way better than it should be for a lens that costs as much as it does. The only caveat is it's a variable aperture. It's a 4.5 to 6.3. But I'm a big fan of that for travel. But also Tamron makes a great 70-180 G2, I think it's called. There's so many options now. Like, we're blessed to have such a variety of lenses. When I started doing this, I still remember I got the Viltrox. Like, Viltrox is one of the very first companies, and we're only talking like 5 years ago. They were one of the very first companies to start making third-party E-mount autofocus lenses. And I was one of the very first people to get the 85mm f1.8 Viltrox from them. And thinking about it, I've worked with Viltrox ever since. They're a good company. That was one of the very first lenses, and it was a huge deal because it was like Sony had their 85 f1.8, and then Viltrox brought out theirs, which was like a third of the price cheaper. Now you can look at every single lens, and I guarantee you there's at least a version from Samyang, a version from Viltrox. Mikey probably has a version. Tamron probably has a version. Who else have we got? Sigma probably has 2-3 versions. Like, it's a different world to where we're at 5 years ago. Any lens, Zeiss, yeah. Any lens that's out there now, there is budget-friendly versions. I used to do a yearly video on that. It's like, don't buy the 135, the 50, the 35, the 24. Buy the budget versions instead if you're just getting started. Probably should do more of those videos, but I just don't have the passion to do it anymore. They perform really well and they help a lot of people, but they're a lot of work. Imagine you're shooting something at 640 base ISO, and for that scene, perfect exposure would be 1000 ISO. Just by a little difference, would you go to 12K ISO and do an ND? To go up to 1000, no, just go up to 1000. I'm talking like a mid ISOs When you hit like 5,000, 6,400, that's when it makes more sense to go up to 12,800 and use an ND to stop down. Viltrox 16mm f1.8 for the price is a revolution on the Sony market area. Yeah, it is. Still have that right here. This is actually the lens I use now for real estate. I sold my 1635, and for real estate, I just shoot most of the stuff at 16, and this is the lens. It was crazy when they brought this lens out. Viltrox knows what they're doing. I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot more lenses from Viltrox this year. You know whose channel, if you like budget lenses, go watch Mark Camera Crisis. Mark Bennett's Camera Crisis. What's his actual channel name called? Is it just Camera Crisis? He reviews like Mark Bennett's Camera Crisis. He reviews, I don't know how that guy puts out so many videos. I've talked about it before, like 3-4 videos a week. Looks like he's on a break right now. Slacking. He reviews every single third-party lens that's out there and does a great job at it. He's got a great on-camera persona. He's also a comedian, so that definitely helps. He's really good on camera. What lens is this? This one right here? Should say in the title, shouldn't it? Can't see. It's a 10mm f2.8. The Lauer has autofocus with a ridiculously, I think it's 12 centimeters, the minimum focus on this. It's a wild lens. It's a lot of fun. You were talking about going through lens cycles and switching to manual, etc. Have you used any of the DZO ARAs at all? ARAs at all? I haven't. I know Kofi has a set of those. Or if not, what manual focus lenses have you used that work good with the likes of the FX3? I'm on a full anamorphic. The first if we go back, the first proper manual focus lens that I enjoyed using was the Helios 442 58mm. That was good for a few videos. I've used that to shoot a few talking head videos before. It's got a really nice look. The bokeh on it is super swirly. But now in terms of lenses I'm using to shoot stuff for myself, like if I travel and I just want some beautiful scenes, me walking into frame, doing some stuff, it's always anamorphic now. I got the Blazer Remus, the 33, the 45, and the 65. So Viltrox has more of the lab line of lenses coming out this year. Oh yeah, really? That's interesting. What do they got? Let's take a look. Viltrox Lab. Viltrox Lab lens series is basically their G Master. I don't see anything about it on their website, but I'm sure we'll see them all at NAB. I wonder what they'll do. Probably makes sense to just work through all the primes of 24, 35, 50. Wish the A7 IV had a native expand aspect ratio. You're telling me. You are telling me. So we get, I'm pretty sure I can say this. When you go to Sony events, Sony really cares about what people think and how we use our cameras, and they ask for our pains and that kind of thing. And you'll go in focus groups sometimes. And my number one thing I keep asking for is why is there's such a limited number of cameras that has the ability to do the aspect ratio overlay, and then why can't we shoot in that aspect ratio as well? And they take the feedback every time, but we'll see. Have you heard about Efinity? The price of camera gear is very friendly, but I only 1 year of guarantee. So it's hard to look the whole this is a great topic for a conversation of a video, really. The whole topic of warranties and guarantees for lenses is an interesting one, because a lot of companies, especially Tamron, boast way bigger warranties than your traditional ones. And they'll say you get a 3-year warranty, but if you register the lens, we'll give you a 5-year warranty instead. My question to you is, are you going to be keeping the lens that long? But then with the Chinese manufacturers, you only get the 1 year warranty. And having dealt with not specifically lenses, but like Chinese companies for the 1 year warranty, there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, and it ultimately ends up you have to send the lens back to them through a trackable, insurable method, and often it just doesn't make sense. So something to think about with cheaper lenses that come with a warranty. If you're buying a cheap lens, forget the warranty or the guarantee even exists. Personal opinion. Some people won't like that, but I want to get a lens for concerts, but I love the warp look on wider lenses. Yeah, I mean, like the fisheye look, you mean? Like this? That's why you need multiple lenses in your bag, really, or multiple bodies. You would rock a 24-70 or a 7200 concert, and then you'd have a wide lens for the alternate angle, because it's way quicker to just pick up a camera, drop it, pick up the other camera, than it is to change a lens out. So there's no ideal solution for that. There's no lens that really gives you a good focal length and is super wide and gives you the wide angle look. In cinema, they're shooting 4K or 6K standard, or now what? With my limited scope of knowledge, my understanding is, I'm not even sure in cinema. I mean, if it's shot in IMAX, that's the equivalent of 18K. That's how they're able to blow it up so big and has so much detail. But if you look at, think about the FX3. I hate using this reference because I hate that the FX3 is tied to this film so much, but the creator, they used a ton of FX3s to shoot low light. The max that this can shoot is 4K. So 4K is clearly enough. I don't think 6K we're at 6K yet. Do you rig your camera? Do you know anything about ground loop? If so, can you teach me how not to fry my camera? I'm trying to power my monitor and camera using one V mount battery. Isn't ground loop to do with, isn't that audio? I'm not too sure. You're talking about stopping your camera from being fried when you turn everything on from a kill switch from the battery, right? I've had no problems with that whatsoever. The biggest thing you can do is just make sure when you're looking at the voltages of everything and the outputs. Give me an example of what you mean, maybe can help you. Just picked up a used FX30 here in the UK for $12.60 as a C cam for weddings. Your vids helped me a bunch making a decision. Great to hear, Andrew. Yeah, the FX30 is very much slept upon. I'm a vendor for Sony and we give feedback constantly. Our biggest gripe has been dealing with the G7X, but they ignore us on feedback. What's the G7X?